Hi everyone, this is editor version of Danny talking to you from beyond the episode. Just a quick heads up that we did have some issues with fan noise in this episode. We did our best to try to fix it during recording, but we didn't really succeed. So there will be some bits we hear fans spinning up in the background. Hopefully it doesn't distract you too much. And otherwise, enjoy the episode. Bye.
Hello everybody, this is 30 for Knowledge. I'm George.
And I'm Danny.
Thank you for joining us today. We've got another great episode. Today Danny is going to be teaching us all about his chosen subject. How are you feeling this week, Danny?
I'm feeling good. I like how you were about to say what it is.
I know, I was thinking Game Boy.
And here's the thing, what I ended up researching kind of went off tangent a little bit, as the best bits of research do. But to answer your original question, I am fab. How are you?
I'm great. Got my first jab yesterday.
Oh.
No, on Friday.
Oh yeah, we forgot about that.
Feel great, feeling fine.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
No jokes about 5G or something becoming magnetic or...
I mean, if there's like interference in the podcast, you know what to blame.
I was thinking for a while, I was like, this is your fault.
It's all my fault.
Even though I didn't know you had a jab or whatever.
You mentioned to me before we started recording that this could be quite a depressing tale. So there's probably a good alert to raise.
I mean, I don't want to call back too much to the previous episode, because in the future, when we are very, very successful and there's hundreds of episodes out, I don't want people to be like, what was the last episode? But I feel that whereas last episode, you took a fairly innocuous object such as the vacuum cleaner and had this wonderfully wacky tale of its origins and all the people involved, my one starts off kind of sad, gets better, but overall it's still kind of like, so yeah.
I'm so excited. Obviously, like, no one else can see your face, but what a face to pull with that sound.
And that's another problem. So, look, it's all finding our feet. I made so many mistakes with this topic.
That's fine, we all do.
There's so many mistakes, and it will, yeah, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Like problem number one is a lot of this has to do with imagery. Probably not the best thing to do in an audio medium, but, you know, we live and we learn.
Mate, how many, I tried to give you so many images yesterday, describing them for at least 5 minutes until I had found the perfect word, so I wouldn't worry about it.
Cool.
I think if you're ready, let's dive in. I'm 30 for Knowledge.
Okay, you're 30 for Knowledge, I'm 30 for Knowledge. Our audience are probably 20, 30, 40 for Knowledge.
Yeah.
50 maybe, we'll see. But cool, alright, we'll jump into it. So if I was to say the word to you, the word or name or whatever, however you want to call it.
I'm so excited.
Anyway, so if I was to say the word, I mean, it might be a bit slow because I think we talk about this out of business hours. And if I said the word Resusci-Anne to you, what floats into your mind?
Well, just like from what I've gleaned, mainly from probably having naughty conversations with you when we should be talking about it,
yeah.
Is that it's like the kind of standard name or like a famous name of like a resuscitation doll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, totally gleaned it from us talking about it. But yeah, that was the start of the topic for this week, Resusci-Anne. And, you know, some people might not know who Resusci-Anne is or what it is. I'll say that many millions or hundreds of millions of people have seen her face.
Okay.
Yeah. And, but they might not realize it. And it's actually a face that's been basically paraded around the planet for over 100 years now, which is a bit of a weird thought.
Wow, you're almost like making her sound like some weird like urban myth.
Yes, but this is depressing.
Like Slender Man.
It kind of is. It kind of, yeah. Basically, I know that we're meant to talk about our sources, but I'll talk about the sources at the end because, again, kind of spoilery as to where this kind of tale goes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to be pro here. So
nice, I like it.
You set such a standard last week that I'm just...
And obviously, like my sources didn't really give anything away.
So our tale starts in the late 19th century in Paris.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paris!
Yeah, so I mentioned mistake number one was me picking a subject that had to do a lot with imagery. And mistake number two is picking a subject that involves a lot of French words. And I've done 5 years of French and I can't pronounce French words for the life of me.
I mean, this has immediately sold the podcast. Like, this episode is going to be worth it alone for the mispronunciations and us both butchering the French language.
I'm trying. I'm trying. I'm really trying. So we start in the late 19th century, in late 19th century Paris.
Right, okay.
Like I said, it gets a bit depressing just to start with. It starts with the apparent suicide of a young woman. Basically, apparently, allegedly, threw herself into the river Seine? Seine? The river Seine? All right. Well, sure.
I said that really confidently.
You said it with such confidence.
I think it's the Seine.
The Seine? Okay, we'll go with it.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's already like going to be one of the corrections for Don't Quote Me on that when we eventually make that episode.
If I ever put this on YouTube, it's going to be comments just full of people being like, "What is wrong with you?" We
welcome corrections, by the way. Yeah. If you were a vacuum expert and I got something wrong, or if you're an expert on Danny's subject and we get something wrong, please let us know.
Yeah.
At thirsty anymore. 30 knowledge at outlook.com.
There you go.
Good plug. Sorry.
Such a good plug. So a young woman apparently threw herself into the river Seine in the late 19th century. The date says it's around 1880, but it seems to vary from account to account. And now, naturally, like the responsible Parisians, they fished her body out, and it was quite a popular way back in the day to kill oneself. I don't know how often people want to kill themselves in late 19th century Paris. I imagine quite a lot. But they fished out her body, and she was unidentified. She was an anonymous woman who no one knew, and so apparently back in the day, the popular thing to do, or the correct process, was to get a body and then hang it in the window of the mortuary, waiting to see if it would be identified by passers-by.
No way, that is horrific.
So any person who died, whether it was suicide or not, they got taken to the mortuary and they got displayed in the windows because there was no other way to say we need to get the identity of this person.
Wow.
So, and even more morbidly, is apparently this was actually quite a attraction back in the day. It was like just a thing you do during the day. Be like, oh, honey, let's take the kids and go see who died today and see if there's anyone we know.
I mean, that is absolutely wild and how horrific. I mean, the relationship with death has completely changed from, hundreds of years ago to now. That's awful. And, the idea of people going to see their loved ones to identify them is like horrific to us now.
Mm-hmm.
But only a couple of hundred years ago we were hanging from the windows being like, who is this?
I told you it wasn't going to be a happy episode.
Is this yours? Have you lost this? God, that's horrific.
It's quite morbid. So apparently back in the day that's how you did it. You had no way of communicating it any further. You had no way of projecting information. It was just hang them up in a window, preserve them, and see if anyone recognised them.
I mean, presumably they didn't hang them by the neck.
I'm not going to lie. When I first read it, I did think of like a butcher's shop, kind of like slabs of meat.
Like a Peking duck in the window of Chinatown.
There was one picture. It was like an illustration, and it showed like basically like crowds crowding around the window, and then they kind of just have the corpses not pressing into the window, but yeah. Anyway, so that was that. So
did they just put them in like nice clothes?
I don't know. I mean, I probably should.
Jay, if we can find a picture, that'd be great for you.
I'll try and find a picture. I mean, that'd be a hell of a thing, but
I mean,
it might get taken down.
What? Quite literally, I hope.
Yeah. So that's the start of our story. So now no one, so spoiler alert, no one would come to identify her or claim her. This was unknown woman, and she would come to be known as l'inconnue de la Seine. Again, probably completely butchered it, but that's the unknown woman of the Seine. And the reason she got notoriety, or the reason she became famous, was the way the tale goes. Again, there's a lot of ambiguity in a lot of this.
So is this like French folklore?
It's more like
French urban myth.
I was going to say urban myth. It's basically, this is, as far as we know, in massive quotation marks, the official story.
Okay.
But there's so little verifiable sources and stuff there. So it's contested, but it's not like there's really any other kind of stories out there. And what happened was this anonymous young woman, they said that she was probably like 17, 18, 19 years old at most. She became a fixture of this place because apparently she was so pretty. She died and she drowned, but apparently she was a beautiful young person. And the way the story goes is the pathologist who was on duty and who was keeping track of all these corpses apparently grew obsessed with her. So, I mean, again, I don't know, 19th century Paris, I don't know what else there was to do at the time, but this guy who was responsible for the bodies grew obsessed with the young woman the young unknown woman of the Seine. And he grew so obsessed. What?
You just like saw my face and you say something. I think maybe we should just say that I don't know where this story is going. It's very creepy already. I'm like, ooh. I think it might be worth saying, because I don't know where this tale is going. I think it might be worth saying that, like, maybe I don't know. You tell us. Like, is there a trigger alert here that we should say?
No. I was going to say that's probably the absolute nadir of the creepiness.
All right. I think in future, I think we should be like, if something creepy does happen, we should trigger warn.
Don't worry. This is PG.
Woo!
It's PG. Besides our language, it's a very PG kind of thing.
I'm already so creeped anyway, but obsessed. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it gets a bit weird, but it doesn't get creepy if that difference makes any sense.
I mean, it's probably weird enough. You're obsessed with a dead person, but anyway.
So, and it's his job as well. It's not like some random passerby looking in the window. It's like, ooh, it wasn't that. It was the guy who was responsible.
Could you imagine if like someone walked past like the mortuary window, saw a woman? It's like a Disney film. He's like a Parisian businessman just walking through, locks eyes to this corpse, and it's like, who is she? She's the one for me.
Again, very bad that we're doing this on an audio medium, but I'm wiggling my finger at George to say,
oh my god.
Not exactly, but it kind of like starts to lend itself to that kind of thing. So, late 19th century Paris.
Okay.
It's a very French place.
Place.
If you think about every stereotypical late 19th century French thing where everything is romanticized, that's the kind of direction we're going in.
Okay.
But yeah, so this pathologist, he grew very obsessed with her and how pretty she was. And just to clarify, when I say with how pretty she was, it was the fact that I haven't described what the face was. I haven't described what she looked like. The thing that drew everyone's attention was the fact that she had this kind of peaceful look to her. Okay? It was this, the fact that she had this face that was kind of smiling.
Okay.
So, kind of creepy.
Yeah.
When you get a body out of the Seine of a person who apparently committed suicide, and it's a young woman with a smile on her face, it immediately caught everyone's attention, and it caught the attention of this pathologist. She basically came to be known as like a drowned Mona Lisa, because it was just because you ever seen like the Mona Lisa? She has like a half smile. That's what the lady, the woman of the Seine had, the unknown woman of the Seine had. She had this weird half smile, closed eyes, but like described as they could spring open at any moment. So everyone was like obsessed with her and the look that she had. So this pathologist went a step further and basically asked a plasterer to make a cast of her face.
Okay.
So back in the day, I don't know how often they still do it, but you would make a death mask of something. You'd make a death mask of the person and that gets cast. So this guy asked a local plasterer to make a death mask of the unknown woman of the Seine.
And that's not too uncommon.
That's not too uncommon.
That's a lot. People do that all the time.
I mean, I think he did do it just because he was like, she's so pretty. And I'm like, a bit creepy.
And with like the half smile thing, where, you know, death is romanticized, in her death it's almost like she's happy being dead. It's like, oh, she's
immortalized.
Peace and happiness in death. And they're like, ooh, yeah. So like emo about it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're very 19th century French about it. It's just
like, so 19th century about it. Michael Brown as well.
Yeah. So she had, or they had a death mask made of her. And now, in all my research, I tried to find the exact steps of what happened next. Right? I couldn't find anything. Again, late 19th century, very bohemian, everyone's documenting nothing and just writing tales about everything. What happened next was he made the mask, he got the mask made, and then somehow it became popular. Somehow it became a thing that people wanted. As in, they started selling it. They made the death mask of her, and then they started making copies, and they started producing it en masse, and they just sold it.
So were they like, was like a bust of her head?
It's like literally like a mask. It's like a bust, but with just a face.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
So picture something like the size of a head, just the front of the face, and then and people just wanted it. They were like, it's weird. Again, with the comparisons like the Mona Lisa, it's like that. It's like having a piece of art.
And so this lady was obviously her face at the time was like that closed eyes. You know,
slight half smile.
Her skin is like obviously retreating because she's slowly decaying.
No.
Which is pulling back her lip to smile. No.
Oh well. This is the thing. Like the descriptions at the time were like her face was very vital and healthy.
Wow.
As in, so it's like this completely smooth face, no signs of any kind of trauma, no signs of, again, apologies for upsetting you here, but no signs of like bloating or swelling or decomposition.
Wow.
None of that stuff was there. It was just a perfectly preserved half smile of a woman.
Almost saint-like.
Almost saint-like, again. And this is what ends up leading to this weird obsession with her, and why her face ended up everywhere in late 19th century Paris.
It's so interesting.
It's weird. And so, yeah, they started selling reproductions of the death mask, and it became a fixture of people's homes.
Ooh.
Yes, that's what I thought when I read it. I was on a train writing this up, and I was like, ugh. Because, yeah, so, and the exact words were, it became a kind of like interior decoration fixture in Bohemian Paris.
Okay.
So they were very Bohemian, they were very Paris, and they were just like, have you seen my death mask of Lincoln de la Seine? No, it looks a lot like my death mask of Lincoln de la Seine. You know what we should do? We should go to the shops and buy more death masks of Lincoln de la Seine.
For all of our friends.
And that's what happened. It just became this thing that was in people's houses in Paris and potentially beyond, of this anonymous woman that was never identified and was just seen as this, like you said, this kind of like saint-like figure.
Christ.
Yeah, so what would happen then is over the next couple of years and decades, it would be an inspiration for like loads of artists, novelists, poets, songwriters. They just took her, the unknown woman of the Seine, and would like insert it into fiction. They would write stories that revolved around her. They would like put like these mythical identities against her, and she was like the muse for like early 20th century Paris at this point. And it just became this fixture, mostly in France, but it did kind of like go a bit more global at that point. And that's where this starts. So we go from late 19th century Paris to about early 20th century Paris. So now we go to Norway, 1913.
Okay.
And this is kind of like the second half of this tale.
So we're on the eve of the First World War.
On the eve of the First World War, still in Europe.
Yeah.
And what happened here? An absolute leg end was born. A guy called Asmund Lerdahl. Again, I shouldn't have picked this topic with a bunch of people whose names I'm probably butchering, but Asmund Lerdahl. And this was a guy, he's just a Norwegian dude. He was what would become, much like the guy in your tale, I think it was Kenny.
David T. Kenny.
David T. Kenny. Was he the self-made man?
Yes.
Yeah, so this is
the all-American hero.
This is another self-made man.
The all-Norwegian hero.
We might as well rename this podcast Self-Made Men.
Self-made
men. Just
men.
talk about self-made men until the end of time.
And self-made people.
No,
self-made people,
no, just men.
Oh god.
It's not. It's funnier if it's just loads of men being men and self-making themselves.
Self-making themselves.
So, now I'm just gonna like just breeze over the first part of this guy's life, right?
Okay. Nothing interesting happened. He was born, had friends.
Well, no, this is the thing. This is why this guy's such an absolute ledge. Like I've written here, my actual note is Asmund Lerdahl was a ledge. That's my official note for this podcast. Born in 1913 in Norway. He went to business school, fair enough, Norway, business. And then he spent his youth travelling all over Europe by bicycle. Why can't I do that? Why can't we do that? We should do that.
I mean, we can't right now.
Not right now.
Coronavirus, but we could do that. Yeah.
We're getting old, but we could do it.
We should do it before we're old.
We should do it before we're too old. So he spent all of his youth just bicycling around Europe.
And then we're just there getting bloody trains like losers.
Just trains like losers. Just training all over Europe like a...
I think I've interrailed twice. What a loser. Could have been on a bike.
So he does that. He marries his missus called Margaret in 1939 on the eve of the Second World War. So at this point in his life, he's about to experience 2 world wars, which, is never fun. He starts a printing business in 1940, and then obviously from about 1941 until 1945, he has to deal with Nazi occupation. Fortunately, he's fine. He doesn't have to go to war. He doesn't have to have any horrific stuff happen to him. So we can have a bit of levity in this story.
He's one of the lucky ones of the war.
He was. Now, this guy would go on to start with publishing children's books. And he was very successful, so he starts with publishing children's books. And he eventually goes into toy making and just going into children's toys and making little wooden cars, all this kind of stuff, right? And then, because this guy was such a self-made man and so much of an absolute beast of an innovator, this guy starts experimenting with something called plastic. Ooh. Now you have to remember, up until this point, all kids' toys are made out of only the hardest objects, only wood, only metal, only sharp glass, whatever they were doing back then.
I mean, it was Splinter Central, wasn't it?
It was, dude, just, it was outrageous.
I mean, it's one of those things now, isn't it? Where like, not to derail the story, but it's like, oh man, he started using plastic.
Yeah, I did have that
crap.
thought. I did have that thought. It's like, ooh, he started using plastic. Oh shit.
What genius started using plastic? Oh wait a minute.
Just people in the future like, no,
it's going to be one of the layers of the earth once we're gone.
Asmund, don't do it. But Asmund, being the self-made man he is, he's like, no, I will look into plastic. So he starts looking.
He didn't know. He didn't know.
No one.
He didn't know about the turtles.
He didn't.
No.
He's
not making straws. To be fair,
he wasn't. He was making kids' toys. So he starts experimenting by himself with plastic and seeing how it is, getting like soft plastic and PVC specifically. Now, the reason this is such a big deal is, like I said, toys were hard back then. It was just wooden cars with metal spikes all over them and all that kind of stuff. He comes up with plastic and he starts manufacturing soft plastic toys. And these are a massive hit. This revolutionizes toy making because it's like, oh, cool, we don't have to worry about our kids being injured anymore because they're playing with, a solid metal horse. And they start making toys. They start making toys out of soft plastic, and it's all very, very successful. And one of their most successful ones is the Anne doll. So it's a little doll called Anne, and it becomes Toy of the Year. I don't know in which area, if it's just in Norway, Norway's Toy of the Year. It could be.
Do we know the year?
No. I tried really hard, but it was just called Toy of the Year. And it might have been Toy of the Year for many years, because life moved a lot slower back then.
Toy of every year.
Toy of every year until the PlayStation.
I think we should probably take that with a grain of salt. You know how advertising works. You literally, especially back then, say anything.
It's Toy of the Year because we say so.
Yeah.
But the reason it was Toy of the Year was because it had two very specific innovations in the line of toys. It had natural hair, and it had eyes that could close. They could go to sleep. And it was just a massive hit.
Ooh.
Yeah. Now, this has all been very happy-go-lucky and very joyful. So I'm going to bring it back down again. Okay.
So for a moment I was like, this guy's like Santa Claus. He literally is in a snowy place. He lives in Norway. He's making toys for children.
Yeah.
He survived World War II and World War I. And yeah, he's now seems like a great guy.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's all been very happy-go-lucky. So I'm going to bring it down just to be sad again. He, unfortunately, during a family vacation, he had a little mishap. There was a little mishap where his son, Tor...
Remind us of his name.
Oh, this guy, sorry. Asmund Lerdal.
Right, Asmund.
So
Asmund's son.
Asmund. I'm going to call him Asmund. I know the proper thing to use the last name, but this guy's first name.
I think that his first name is also easier to say.
It's easier for me to say because
I'm definitely going to make less mistakes with Asmund than the surname.
So Asmund and his family go on holiday.
Right. Tor is a cool name.
Tor, yeah. So
it's like one letter from Thor. I imagine. I don't know.
I don't know if it was like pronounced Thor and it's just a spelling.
Ooh.
Because they feel very close. But
that's great.
It's a Norwegian thing. So
he was Tor before it was cool.
He was Tor. He was the first Tor, or maybe Thor. You know that thing like in Lord of the Rings where it's like this is like someone's son of something.
Yeah.
I imagine Thor. Imagine Thor's son if he has one. It's called Thor. This is Thor, son of Tor.
Nice.
Son of Asmund.
Son of Odin.
Yeah, probably. Knowing this guy and his lineage, probably. So Asmund and the family are all on vacation one day, and then Tor almost drowns. So his young son almost drowns.
I'm getting goosebumps.
I couldn't believe it. I was just like, no way. Asmund, because he's an absolute legend, pulls him out of the water, does CPR. Well, he doesn't even do CPR, but he does like some rudimentary version of CPR, and clears his airways, and his son survives. And he's all good, he's fine. That happens, and then life carries on for a bit. So it got a bit sad, and we carried on. So, in the mid-1950s, CPR gets developed. So it's developed by a bunch of people. I think it was a mixture of the American Heart Foundation and some other folks, and they're like, we need to get this out into the world. And they're like, we need to be able to train people to do CPR. We need to be able to get this down to the common man kind of thing. Now, when I was first doing the research, the way it was written was the American Heart Foundation created CPR, and then they went to Asmund to ask him to make a CPR doll. And I was like, hold up, there's a few steps missing here, because that's a bit of a jump. I was like, this is...
Just one guy in the American Heart Foundation is like, I know a man in Norway.
I know a man in Norway. But after further reading, what actually happened was, because he was one of the leading guys in terms of plastic manufacturing.
Oh, wow, okay.
In terms of soft plastic manufacturing, they were like, this guy could be good. And what had happened before that was, I believe it was the Norwegian military had actually hired him to create fake wounds as part of like training for like the military. Was creating these plastic fake wounds, or I think they call it moulages or something. It's this thing that's meant to like help train and help show like battle wounds and scarring and stuff, and then how to train.
So almost like working with prosthetics at this point.
Yeah, it's essentially that. It's kind of like I think it'll go on to be called like healthcare simulation or health simulation.
Okay.
And so they're like, he's an absolute beast in terms of like soft plastics. He helps the Norwegian military with all their training for like certain healthcare things, and that gets the attention of these people who want to find a way to teach CPR to healthcare professionals all over the world. And so they get in contact with him, and he's like, and only because he was so into CPR because of what happened to his son, and he's like, hell yeah, I'm going to do this. And so he started making the world's first mannequin for CPR, the world's first CPR training dummy kind of thing. And then at some point, he was like, this needs to look natural, because the original plan was that, it's just going to be like just some random head and some random torso covered in plastic. He had the intuition to be like, this needs to be approachable. It's going to be teaching people. It needs to be something that's kind of not completely scary to look at.
Like a strange mannequin.
Yeah, it can't be a strange mannequin. It has to be a fairly approachable mannequin.
Relatable, yeah.
Approachable and relatable. Now, kind of similar to what you said about like, ooh, that was a good idea at the time. But looking back to like, oh, crying out loud, that's like, why did you have to do that? Well, it's not as big a deal, but at the same time as deciding it had to be a natural and relatable looking thing, he's also like, it should be female.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Because he felt that if you're training men in the 1960s, they wouldn't want to essentially do mouth-to-mouth on another man kind of thing. Now, ignoring the fact that you're meant to be a healthcare professional and you're training on a dummy, that doesn't seem like the biggest issue. Well, it shouldn't be, absolutely. It shouldn't have been the biggest issue. But, again, 1960s, it's just good that they were doing this stuff. So, he's building this mannequin. He wants it to be relatable. He wants it to be approachable. And he wants it to be female. And he's like, what face? What face should I do? And he thinks back all the way to his childhood. And he thinks back to his grandparents' house. And he was like, they had a very weird mask on the wall of their house. What's that?
My God, look who's back.
And then he goes, and then the way I picture it is that like he has like a thunderbolt hits his head and he goes, L'inconnu de la Seine.
But I'm gonna, can I practice saying it? Can you say it to me? I want to say it back.
You're having a guy who doesn't have to say it.
And we're gonna say it together in like the way he would, in that moment of whatever. So you teach me it?
So.
L'inconnu de la Seine. L'inconnu de la Seine. Okay.
On three?
Yeah.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
L'inconnu de la Seine.
Thunderbolts.
I mean, wow. She's back.
And she's back. So
it's crazy how like certain faces from history and like certain people's faces, I don't know, resonate with mankind so much that they just stay with us throughout history. And thinking about all the statues of like old Greek philosophers and poets and stuff, and like we still have like their visage from statues and stuff, and they've just survived. And we're so lucky to have that information as well, survive all of the crap that humans have put the world through, like all the world wars and stuff. It's just incredible that it's just so interesting that we just like hold on to these like certain faces.
I picture what would have happened if they didn't have that death mask, or she had never been found, and if he would have picked like another person from history or something.
Wow.
Because like I said, the equivalent was like the Mona Lisa, and if he would have been like, I don't know, let's see what the Mona Lisa would look like if we did it.
I think for future episodes that you do, I need to really like tone down my like Owen Wilson wows. But I'm like generally just like, this is amazing, it's so fascinating. So he's had his Thunderbolt moment. He's got his face. He knows which one.
And he decided it is going to be her. And so he got the death mask, and they then re-engineered it to be in soft plastic. And that was the start of the modern, or I say modern, but the first proper CPR.
And we're in the 50s now.
This is like 1958 at this point.
Cool.
And then the doll would go.
60s, cool.
Yeah. So and then in the 60s is when it goes into like mass production, and it goes all around the world.
Cool.
And that is the start of like proper modern health and treatment simulation. And then it is why, just to add to the creepiness factor of all of this, it is the most, in some ways it's called the most kissed face in the world, because in terms of the amount of training and people who do it, it's about 300 million people at this point who've done CPR training with this doll would go on to be called Resusci-Anne. This is Resusci-Anne. and it's called Resusci-Anne because they were making an Anne doll before.
Wow.
And that was their most popular one. And so he was like, yeah, cool, let's just call it Anne. This is our Resusci-Anne doll. Now, for some reason in America, they call it CPR Annie. Because
CPR Annie?
Because they're American, and Americans are going to American. And that was it. That's the one that went out to the world, into all kinds of hospitals and training centres.
So, sorry, she's got two names. CPR Annie in the US.
And then Resusci-Anne.
Resusci-Anne in the... Okay.
Sometimes Resusci-Annie. Now, Asmund, being the complete man of a man that he was,
legend.
This was only the start of his triumph, because he was like, okay, we're going to make these things and we're going to train people and stuff. But again, it's this kind of weird intuition thing where he was like, okay, we need to set standards for this. We need to set like international standards of proper CPR usage.
He didn't just make it and just be like, here you go, done. That's my patent.
But it's like, he wasn't even like medically trained. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't any of these things. But he had the intuition to be like, okay, we're now putting CPR out into the world. We're going to be training people. We need to have like international standards for how to do this properly and how to make sure that people are doing it properly. And so, like they were obviously very successful, but he then created funds so that like lesser privileged doctors from other countries would be able to travel and like learn from his stuff. He supported conferences for this stuff. He supported all this kind of cool stuff. And even today, Ladle, the company, I mean, they're not a toy manufacturer anymore. They are a manufacturer of like...
Oh, so the company still exists?
They're still around.
Wow.
And they're still the ones making these simulation mannequins for CPR and stuff. And it's gone into like other stuff now. It's gone into like, you've got like the infant versions, you've got other sized people, you've got all kinds of like healthcare simulation training doll stuff. And they're still like a major player in that.
What a legacy.
It's cool.
I mean, I think apart from the use of evil plastic, I think, the Santa Claus moniker, Father Christmas moniker is appropriate, I feel.
When you said Santa Claus, I was thinking the kind of Santa, like edgy Santa Claus, like the one where he's like topless and ripped, still with a giant white beard and there's like a sack of like toys and
Asmund Claus to save lives.
Asmund Claus. But yeah, and so it carried on, and he just carried on being wicked at providing like support for like healthcare stuff up until his death. And then sadly he died in 1981. So it was a while ago.
Long old life, that. 1981. Wow.
1913 to 1981. It's not a bad knock, and he did well. And then the work that he did was carried on by Tor, who took his place.
The one who nearly drowned. Amazing.
Full circle. So he now runs like the foundation that got set up, all that kind of stuff, and they carried on the work. So whereas this was kind of started out as the morbid tale of L'inconnu de la Seine, a kind of a good thing came out of it.
Yeah.
In a sense of like her drowning, and then the weird obsession with her, and then to Asmund like being able to save his own kid, and then being able to use the knowledge and his innovations and his tenacity to be like, we're going to make this amazing doll and we're going to have it be approachable and it's going to go to all around the world and stuff. I just thought it was amazing.
And so was Resusci-Anne the first doll?
She was the first, she was basically the first CPR mannequin.
And since then, there's been more of her from the same company, and
they've gotten
they've
like
branched out now of companies make them. It's not just Resusci-Anne.
Yeah, completely. And
she's like the star.
Yeah, essentially. And I think pretty much I think that same template is still used. And I don't know if the same face is used, or if it's just a thing that only the Ladle company does, or if it's something that everyone can use. I don't know. I don't know what fair use policy is when it comes to a person's face. Yeah. Especially like an unidentified person. But they like updated their stuff, and like now their mannequins have like 3G in them and like have like metrics, and that's basically. I do have some tidbits.
Yeah.
I was going to give, so bear with me for 2 seconds.
I just think the human story of the actual girl of the Seine is like, Captain Hindsight as always, but it's just like, she didn't, if she knew like the impact she could have on the world, it's like really sad with anyone. You never know the impact you can have on the world. And it was only obviously like her death that happened. It's a shame.
It's really sad.
Really
I told you
sad.
it's going to be a sad episode.
It reminds me of that Doctor Who episode with like Van Gogh. And like they still show him like his future, but then he still commits suicide anyway. Yeah,
that stupid clip gets recommended to me on YouTube every like
6
months. I don't know why.
It's quite touching.
It's a very touching moment, but I don't like to randomly start crying in the middle of my work day because a YouTube clip got recommended to me. And it's not like I even searched Doctor Who stuff. But anyways, so random tidbits that came up out of this. One thing about the unknown lady from the Seine. One historian noted that she basically became the kind of erotic ideal of the time.
Wow.
In the sense that so the exact...
she's dead. She smiles.
So
she's pretty.
I'm going to read the quote verbatim. According to Hans Hesse of the University of Sussex, Alvarez reports the inconnu became the erotic ideal of the period as Bardot was for the 1950s. He thinks that German actresses such as Elizabeth Bergner modelled themselves on her. She was finally displaced as a paradigm by Greta Garbo. So it was kind of like before actresses kind of thing. So they were like, she's the erotic ideal at the time, and then, you know, moving pictures came along and they became...
Like how people styled themselves over their like icons. People are styling themselves over like this dead girl.
Yeah, and it was very weird to say the least. So anyways, I promised a bit of further discussion. So, very sad about it being a suicide and like the circumstances around that. A lot of modern folks think it is bullshit.
The whole story.
As in, when they look at the face, and when they look at the circumstances, they're like, there is no way this is the face of a drowned woman. They're like, there's no way in late 18th century Paris, throwing yourself into the Seine and then being dragged out, that you would then have a look on your face of tranquil, peaceful bliss that she seemed to have. They were like,
because do we know how long she was in the river for?
No, there's no info about like
how long she was hanging in the window for.
Info is very scant, so like all of that, and they were all like, look, again, not to be too morbid, but they were like, even if she was committing suicide, even if she was like at peace in massive quotation marks with her decision, they were like, yeah, in your final moments, you're not going to be smiling. You're not going to have that look in your face. And they were like, so a lot of people believe that it wasn't, that wasn't the case. Some people believe that it was actually just a regular face mask made by a professional model. Because like one weird point was, the reason it's like kind of so contested is because they were like, oh, anyone can just smile and have a face mask made of them. But the key thing here is, it's a type of smile, that kind of half smile. It's very difficult to keep that kind of half smile whilst a cast is being made. You can either be like full smile, like yeah, or whatever, but keeping kind of like weird, twitchy, like kind of like little half smile. That's apparently very difficult to keep.
Like it's basically like the WhatsApp emoji. That cheeky like side smile.
I think that's a little insight into you there because
I use that a lot.
So it's contested.
That is. I'm trying to do it now. It's quite hard to maintain. Like my cheeks.
It feels it starts like twitching. So they were like. And so some people think that it was a professional model since it was such a difficult thing to do.
Right.
To be able to do it. Some people, the twist goes further. Some people suggest it was a mask that she had made, that she was a model, and that she had made, and that the mask had been made, and then she died or committed suicide or whatever. And then that got mixed up with the pathologist making the death mask and falling in love with her and all that kind of stuff.
I see. So maybe both of those things happened, but the story got twisted, and it was actually it was already made, and then people just started banking on it.
Yeah.
Or the first story is they just got a model to do it and then just said it was the girl from the
scene. Because like I said, records from at that point, like the actual records of the story are so scant that it's difficult to get any like one thing. So that was that. So that's the scrutiny that came up to it. Incidentally, the name of the people who got checked in with this, like the ones who were doing the research, and they checked in with the people who have what I've written here as one of the most undesirable jobs on the planet of the Paris River Police, aka the Brigade Fluviale. I'm never going to do a French topic ever again. Aka the folks responsible for pulling drowned bodies from the Seine, even to this day. Yeah. Because it's still a thing that happens. And they were the experts who were like, yeah, no, you would never have that kind of face like, after what's happened. Moving on to the rest of the things. The Lorenzi workshop in Arcueil in Paris is the one that did the death masks. And so they have life and death masks of numerous historical figures, and they still have them, including the death masks of Napoleon and Beethoven. So this is still a place you can go to and see these things.
So they were producing them?
Yeah, so even like at the time.
And they still exist now?
They still exist now.
Are they more like a museum now? Are they still doing it?
Unknown.
Oh. But they've got Napoleon and Beethoven?
Napoleon, Beethoven, and a million others who were in Paris at the time, or like at some point in their lives, because they do life and death masks.
Gosh, just imagine these like creepy people just waiting on the curb in Paris, like a bucket of plaster ready to go. Like, plaster in Paris at any moment. It's like, there's a dead guy, quick, get his face!
Throw plaster on him.
All over him, quick for the police car.
Apparently this is a place.
Collected another face.
And then we'll sell them. Apparently this is a place where you can still go and see these things. And they still sell copies of link on de la Seine, so you can still get it.
We should get one!
I don't know if we should.
If we ever get anywhere.
Anywhere.
I just don't want to jinx it. But if we ever get anywhere and like maybe we have like a room where we do this regularly, besides from my bedroom where we are right now.
You want to have a death mask?
We should get one as like a trophy. Oh, that'd be great. We should get one and hang one up.
Let's not call it a trophy though.
That's it. After the episode finishes, I require the website and I'm going to buy the death mask.
Yeah. But now it's called Noyée de la Seine, the drowned woman of the Seine, rather than the unknown woman of the Seine. And last bit of trivia. How do you think this whole story relates to Michael Jackson? Not to make it weird, I'm just asking.
From Smooth Criminal.
Did you know? What did you just guess?
So my housemate is a nurse, and he accidentally gave me that little tidbit of knowledge there.
I hate your housemate.
But I'd love to hear it from you to clarify, because I'm not sure how. I know that's what it's based on in the song.
Mm-hmm.
And are you okay? Are you okay?
Are
you okay, Annie? But like, what's the link? Why did Michael Jackson put that in?
No idea.
Well, my flatmate said he was doing a resuscitation course at the time.
Oh, okay.
He was like learning about CPR, and then he found out the doll's name was Annie.
Mm-hmm.
And so Michael Jackson, being creative person that he is, he was like talking to the doll, and Annie, are you okay? And he put it in the song.
So a slight tweak to that, at least from what I read, is that it is actually part of what you're meant to do before you give CPR, because you're meant to check with the victim, or the person who's you're going to give the CPR to. You check with them first. You're like, are you okay? Do you remember when we did CPR training and you're meant to shout at the person first, like, hello, 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 all that kind of stuff?
Wow, I don't. When was that? Sixth form?
Sixth form, yeah.
That's a very long
when
time
we were
ago.
16. So.
I need a refresher.
But yeah, when you first approach the victim, you shout first to see if they're responsive at all. You're meant to go like, hello, hello, are you okay? Are you okay?
Aya?
Aya?
Are you alright?
Want a cup of tea?
I mean, that would be what my mum wanted straight away.
Yeah, basically. Are you okay? It's like, yes, it's a very British thing. Someone's just there in the middle of the road, like...
I'll come back with a cup of tea.
But yeah, so you're meant to like get any kind of indication from the victim if they're responsive at all, and you might say, hello, are you okay? But back whenever Michael was doing this, you're meant to, because the doll's called Annie.
Yeah.
It's Annie, are you okay? Annie, are you okay? That's how it started.
He must have just said it and been like, that's really sick lyrics.
He looked in the mirror. That's really good.
That's really good, Michael.
It's like,
Michael, that's really good.
That's really good, Michael. I see why you're such a big deal, Michael.
Michael. Annie. Do you agree, Annie? But I mean, like, as both like creative people as well, we have moments like that where we like say something or write something down and just be like, oh, that's actually really good. So I imagine, hopefully you went through a similar process like that as well.
Yeah, you'd hope so. But I mean,
great song. Love that song.
Absolutely great song, and it's going to have extra meaning to me now.
Yeah.
Every time I listen to it, I'm going to be thinking of really morbid stuff.
Michael Jackson saving lives.
Mm-hmm.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
We'll save that for another episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it. So all of this started. 300 million people across the planet have now learned CPR from a toy maker and a lady who allegedly committed suicide.
Dang, that was so... I know you were a little bit worried about like the morbidness of the content, but like that was so fascinating. And I think we, part of this and why it is so fascinating is the human struggle and part of like, the morbid curiosity, because humans are so weird.
Yeah.
And what was that? What was the moniker, the title you gave her earlier? Like the woman who's been kissed?
Oh, the most kissed woman in the world, the most kissed face in the world.
The most kissed face in the world. Like,
and the fact that me and you probably
have done that.
Yeah, and
kissed.
Yeah, we well, not each other.
Yeah.
Well, by proxy of
Annie.
Resusci-Anne. Yeah, we managed it. But yeah, I mean, just goes to show, like, even we have been impacted.
Had that snog. I've been
there. So that's the thing. We've seen this face. We've seen her face. We didn't even realize it because it's just we thought it's like some blank mannequin that was just anonymous, just some.
There is, and maybe it is the French emo late 18th century man,
19th century,
late 19th century man that I am. But there is something very romantic and morbidly beautiful about the fact that this unknown drowned woman of the Seine's memory has continued.
Mm-hmm.
She was unclaimed in the city. I assume she might have been raised in. Like, no one claimed her. She was left. Her body was like left by herself, and now it's like part of the tapestry of human life, and that's quite an amazing thing.
Yeah.
Sad end to her story, but a weird, strange honour to her memory.
Yeah, I mean,
this person that wasn't claimed has now been claimed by all of humanity, and she's saving lives.
Like 300 million people. I mean, yeah, like I said, it kind of went into a direction that I was like, where is this going? Like when I started like reading through it, the thing that interested me most was Asmund, and like the whole thing with the unknown woman of the Seine. It's tragic and heartbreaking, and it's got this Bohemian, Parisian romanticism with it. But the thing that ended up kind of like drawing me to this was Asmund, and it's a really weird thing to latch onto. But it was just because he was such. One of the sources that I read was I think it was like almost like the obituary of
Asmund himself.
Yeah, so it's called like In Memoriam of Asmund Ladle, and it's one of the sources. I'll send the source, or I'll post the source or whatever, and it just goes through all the stuff he did, and it just talk about. Like he was such like a kind of kind and gentle soul and stuff. But at the same time, they said the flip side was he was one of the most tenacious and stubborn people that people would meet, because like when he had an idea with it, he just followed through with it.
Wow.
Just went through non-stop.
See some elements of Kenny,
Exactly. Like I said,
like very like shrewd businessman, eye on the prize.
That's the thing, and just the fact that this guy, this toy maker, would end up being so heavily involved in like medicine. And like the distribution of like medical training and like training aids to like millions of people. And a big part of that happening was because of his own near tragedy with his son, and the fact that he was so passionate about it afterwards.
It's crazy, isn't it?
That's the bit that hooked me, because I was just like, bloody hell.
And I think that's my favourite part of the Asmund story. Yes, it is like this. I have a question about Norway afterwards actually as well.
Okay.
But he is like this, making toys, lives in a snowy place, Santa Claus character. But like his passion to not only fulfill like a contract essentially, but then to like take a hand in this information needs to be out in the world to save lives. Just like how I kind of accidentally saved my son because CPR wasn't a thing, or it was a rudimentary idea that they had or method they had before. But then thinking of Tor, had his son not drowned and he had not had, if he didn't need to do that, would he have been interested? Would he have gone through with it? Would we had the tools as soon as we have them now? Mm-hmm. How long would it have taken for modern CPR methods to be invented? And it's amazing now that every time we go for CPR courses or like medical training top-ups, CPR is always a little bit different. Yeah. Like the method's always getting improved on as research and our knowledge of the body. So my question about Norway was there something, because I know for people who don't know, Danny lived in Norway for a little while, were you also drawn to that aspect of the story? No, I didn't even know he was Norwegian or anything. It just went from I didn't know that Resusci-Anne was built in Norway by a Norwegian man in a Norwegian company, just so happened to be there. And I'm the worst tourist in the world, so even in my time in Norway, I didn't do a lot of checking the galleries. You could have gone to the ladle factory. I could have. It's not in Oslo. It's in Stavanger, I think it is. There's some other place in Norway. But if I ever get a chance to go back to Norway, I want to kind of see if there is a museum for this, or any kind of any kind of building or installation. You could buy a full-size Resusci-Anne for our new office. And then we could compare to the test marks. See how they compare to each other. There you go. Put that in the bank for later. But yeah, I think that's basically the tale. I'll try and find something less sad for next time. No, but I think the sadness and the very human element of it, I think works really well, and that's why it's such a fascinating story. Thank you. That was awesome. There was so many. It's so interesting. So interesting. And to play us out, I will now play Smooth Criminal. No, I'm joking. I don't know what Spotify will think of that. We haven't had that conversation with Spotify yet. We haven't spoken to Mr. Spotify yet. No. Yeah. So what he thinks. Any last questions or thoughts about it? I'm just trying to think of anything we need to say in terms of if you've got any ideas for future topics, you can send them to us at 30forknowledge at outlook.com. Mm-hmm. Hit us up on Instagram, same thing, 30forknowledge. Yeah. That's we're getting our social channels in order and trying to
make sure we're spreading ourselves as thin as possible.
And again, if you hear something that you think is wrong and you've got a correction you'd like to make, I mean, send it in. I'd love to see them and hear them. And we've got like some ideas about how we could use them for future episodes where we address any mistakes we make, if any, Danny. We could be amazing. There could be none, but I'm sure we're all human.
Please send audio clips of how we should have pronounced everything if we got any pronunciations wrong.
And we'll address those.
And we'll address those in a hypothetical future episode that may never come.
I'm still thinking about my topic for next time.
Yeah.
I haven't landed on one yet. I've got a couple of ideas, but whatever one I choose should be hopefully interesting.
If there's something we've proven we can get interesting entertainment out of any topic.
Any topic.
I think that should be. I mean, if we ever start to like get low on ideas, I think we should challenge ourselves to be like, all right, I'm going to pick the most mundane nonsense.
A desk.
It's like, how did hair gel get invented?
Well, I mean, like with the vacuum, it was like I chose that, and I was like, there's a treasure trove behind here. So I did just shout out a desk, but now I'm like, but if I start looking into it, there's going to be like a triple homicide somewhere in the desk's history, which would be fascinating. More on that later.
Next time.
Danny, you need to ask me the question.
George, are you still thirsty for knowledge?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I don't know what else to say.
Yeah.
I am. I want more.
You had the line ready.
Yeah.
No follow-up.
I did. I've been waiting all episode just to say that line. I am so ready for more.
Okay, well.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, everyone. I've been Danny.
And just before we go, very low real last thing. I've been told we need a jingle.
Do we?
I don't know. But if someone wants to mock up an interesting jingle, anyone skilled out there.
Do you still play guitar?
When I first played guitar, Danny, I didn't really play guitar. I just like hit the strings in like a beat, and it kind of sounded alright.
We've made a theme song before.
Yeah.
Mostly from you strumming a guitar.
It's like on one chord.
Yeah. It worked, though.
It did.
We had an intro theme. Okay.
But if you can think of a jaunty tune, that could be our jingle, intro and exit jingle, I'd say.
Okay, so we could have an intermission one.
Sure. I don't understand the full purpose. We'll talk about that later.
It's just if I need to take a break. If I'm halfway through a song, I'm like, CBA.
I do kind of wish we were like one of those like American radio stations where we had the buttons.
Oh, the soundboard.
Like a soundboard, yeah. What would our DJ names be? Our American DJ names.
I'll just call myself DJ Asmund at this point.
Asmund at 10:95 a.m.
Asmund and the vacuum.
That's great.
No, it's not.
No, he's here.
It's not. Like, oh, what's up I hear? Oh, it's the vacuum. It's coming. I mean, whatever semblance of rails this was on, we're no longer on it.
No, right. Back to it. I've been George.
I've been Danny. Thank you very much for listening.
And we'll talk to you soon.
See you next time. Bye. Oh my god, wow, what an amazing episode. Editor Danny here again, just to provide the sources that I promised to provide and then I didn't provide any edit. The three main sources were the BBC News article Resusci-Anne and Lincoln New, the Mona Lisa of the Seine, written by Jeremy Grange in 2013. An article on ScienceAlert.com titled How a Dead Girl in Paris Ended Up with the Most Kissed Lips in History from 2018 by Peter Dockrell. And lastly, the official in memoriam of Asmund S. Ladle, I guess it was the obituary page, originally written in 1985 and is available on the Cambridge.org website. Links will be available in the podcast description. Thank you for listening. Bye.